All right, so we're live now. So this is Michael Thull from UNC-Greensboro, and he's an assistant professor there in the social work program. I don't know if it's Mike likes to make it his top claim to fame, but he used to be one of our instructors in our human services program. So he's got an inside scoop on both our program and UNC-G's social work program. So great commodity for us to have, and he's here today to enlighten us on how you all can consider social work and how that might look if you're interested in the program he has at UNC-G. So Mike, I'm going to let you fill in any details there that I just hurried through.
Great. Well, thank you so much, Professor Zook, for having me, and great to be a guest in this virtual environment that we're all getting used to. Throughout the presentation, if there are any questions, then feel free to just jump in and ask, and I'll do my best to answer any questions. So as Professor Zook shared, Forsyth Tech is near and dear to my heart. My first actually full-time faculty position was at Forsyth Tech, teaching in the Human Services Technology program, right there with Professor Zook, and I oversaw the field component. And it was a wonderful experience, and I always remember my Forsyth Tech students very warmly. And one of the coolest things that I experience now in my position at UNC-Greensboro is that very frequently I'll teach in the bachelor's or in the master's program my former Forsyth Tech students. So it's really cool to see people continue on their trajectory. So let me try to share this again. Bear with me one moment. All right. And Bessie, if you, if anybody has anything in the chat or if anything comes up, then just jump in. I'm not the best at multitasking on these.
Certainly, yeah.
These things, so feel free to interrupt.
Okay, sounds good.
So I'll tell you a little bit about what I had wanted to talk about today to you. We'll talk about what is social work, how does social work differ from some of the other helping professions, the professional pathways that are open to you as a social worker. We'll talk about the Bachelor of Social Work, or BSW program is how you'll hear me refer to it at UNC-G, and then have some recommendations specific for you as potential Forsyth Tech transfers if you're thinking about a BSW. And then happy to answer all of your questions about social work, about UNC-G, or what the transfer process might look like. So I wanted to start with this quote or meme that one of my current students shared with me, because I think it really speaks well to the journey that some of you may be on, and that certainly I was on. You're not behind in life. There's no timetable that we all must follow. It's made up. 7 billion people can't do everything in the same order. What's early, what's late, compared to who? Don't beat yourself up for where you are. It's your schedule and everything is right on time. Now, I always like to include this when I'm talking to folks about the program, the BSW program in particular at UNC-G, because sometimes we just being people in general, right, get in our mind this idea that there's a time frame, that you finish high school and then you go to college and you're in and out in 4 years and you do this and you do that, and then you live happily ever after. But the truth is that we are all on a very individual journey. And BSW programs in particular tend to draw folks from a lot of different life experiences, and not necessarily on that same that same timeline as everyone else. So to give you an example, my own story that I'm very open with sharing with my students is that, right out of high school, I grew up in Winston-Salem and I graduated from high school, went to UNC-G, and I spent about 2 years at UNC-G. And over the course of 2 years, where I should have been, at the end, should have been a junior, I was still like a second semester freshman. Um, I hadn't really found my niche yet. And so I left UNC-G and I enrolled at community college. I was living in Greensboro at that time, so I enrolled at Guilford Tech and I took some general education courses. And then I actually took emergency medical science as my associate's path and worked as an EMT in Greensboro for several years before coming back to school, and later realized that social work is what I wanted to do, medical social work in particular. And so what I had initially thought was going to be a very succinct 4 years at UNC-G ended up with a path that took me 10 years, actually, almost to the day. Um, so if your journey is a little bit of a zigzag like mine is, you are certainly not alone in that. So what is social work? The definition of social work, kind of the book definition that I share with students in my intro to social work course, is that social work is the professional activity of enhancing or restoring the capacity for social functioning. So it's this all-encompassing approach of looking at a person as a product of their environment, that people impact the environment and the environment in which they live impacts the person, and that we intervene and address social problems on multiple levels, right? So it's not just working with individuals, it's also working with families, with groups, with communities, with organizations, and with even the larger international community. So how do we differ from other helping professions? Because there are quite a few, right? You could do social work, you could do a bachelor's in human services, you could do psychology, counseling. How social work differs from the others is that social work is very proud as a profession of saying that we're strengths based. And what that means is that in our approach to work with clients at whatever level, um, what we focus on is their strengths, is helping them to see their strengths, to encouraging and nourishing those strengths, and then helping clients to harness those strengths and use them to bring about whatever change in their life they need or think they need. And that differs from a deficit based approach. So, for instance, and some psychologists might argue with me about this, but generally in, say, psychology or counseling, the emphasis is more on pathology, right? Or what's the diagnosis? How is someone abnormal? How are they different from what we consider normal? Whereas social work says, you know what, regardless of all that, let's find where your strengths are and let's harness that. Social work also has a core value system that emphasizes human rights and social justice. And what that means is that everything that we do as social workers must, because of our code of ethics and just our professional identity, approaches the world and our work from the position that there are some innate human rights, that it's the right thing to do, it's the just thing to do, to treat people with dignity, to treat people with respect, to value people's right to self-determination, to make decisions for themselves, for what's best for them. And so, just as an example, one of the last kind of big movements within the social work profession just over the course of the last several months has been playing a really active role in the national elections that just took place. Social work is not a silent profession that says you should believe what you believe and that's okay. Social work is a profession that says we need to stand up and advocate for human rights. One of the other differences is that as opposed to a deficit-based model or a diagnosis-based model, social work emphasizes the person and environment model. And here's an image of what that looks like. So as you look at this image, this is also called, you may have heard it as the ecological model or the person and environment model. But the main idea is that clients or each ones of us, right, are in the middle of this. I think of it as an onion, right, how there are multiple layers to an onion. And so you have the person in the middle, and we interact with all of these layers outside of us, and all of these layers that are outside of us affect us. So social work works at each level. So the micro level being that individual, what we think of as direct practice, the services, the direct services you provide to a client or the folks around us. The meso level, the next level out, is communities and small organizations, right? So even though at the micro level, you might live right here in Winston-Salem and interact with your family and the folks that are close to you, on a meso level, also interact with the greater community, right? The city of Winston-Salem and the state of North Carolina, local government, state government. And then the macro system talks about large groups, large organizations, our national system, even our international system. So we focus on this concept of examining how these different levels impact a person, right? So if I'm having conflict at the micro level, say with my family, social work addresses that. That's important. But at the same time, if we have large groups of people, not if, but the fact that we do have large groups of people that are marginalized or oppressed in the United States, we also intervene as social workers as those on those levels through advocacy and working in legislatures. So the social work model, how it applies to that person and environment concept that we adhere to is that we believe that potential for change occurs at multiple system levels. And not only can change occur at multiple levels, but it has to, right? So if my issue now is that, say I'm experiencing health issues and distress because of that, a social worker might help me navigate the system. But there's this larger issue, right? That we don't have free and equal access to healthcare in the United States. Sometimes issues may seem like small individual issues, but in actuality, they're symptoms of these larger issues that are happening in our environment, in our social environment. The third piece of what the social work model involves is that it's this really amazing integration of direct practice. So one-on-one work with clients, social policy, changing policy so that it better impacts our clients and their lives. And then finally, research. There's an emphasis on research. And what I mean by that is that social work relies heavily on producing research around social issues, around mental health, around health, and that research then influences our interaction. So in a little while, I'll talk about some of those different levels, but in my practice as a clinical social worker, if I choose to use a specific technique, like one of my favorite techniques to use when working with people who use drugs or are facing issues with addiction is motivational interviewing. And the reason that I use that specific approach is not because it just feels good, right? It's because research shows that this is an effective intervention. I feel like this is a good place to pause for just a moment and see if there are any questions or comments.
Sounds good. So let's have you turn on your mics or go ahead and use the chat box, and let's throw out some questions. Mike's given us a lot of good information about social work and given it a good framework of how it may fit into what we're doing with your AAS and human services.
And Betsy, do you want me to continue to pause here or keep going?
Well, let's see if we've got any questions. And of thinking about this, and maybe I can get you started, Mike, while we have them maybe posting a question or getting their mics on. When you think about that model for social work and what students were doing with their human services curriculum or going into those types of settings, do you see a similarity or a real, that they're two separate things?
So that's a great question. So my experience has been that human services, and in particular how the curriculum and the teaching is delivered at Forsyth Tech, is that it's a fantastic marriage when it's joined with social work. I think there are lots of different routes that students can go, but the emphasis in the human services program at Forsyth Tech on direct practice skills, like very concrete, this is how you do things, thinking about HSE 123.
Okay, interviewing techniques.
Right?
Yeah.
So for instance, that, and remembering that course and teaching that course is that it's very much in line with social work interventions and focusing on not just kind of sitting with someone and saying, you know what you need to do to get better. It's seeing what they feel like they need to do, working from their perspective, with an emphasis on empathy. The other thing that I really see is that there are a lot of similarities in the program itself in terms of the professional courses, the skills-based courses, between what you all are experiencing or going to experience at Forsyth Tech and the last 2 years of the Bachelor of Social Work program. The things that the textbooks that the program uses, the skills that human services teaches, is really high level things. What the Bachelor of Social Work adds to the equation is additional general education courses, and then focusing in on social work as the particular perspective. And I'll talk about this in a little while, but when I have transfers come in from Forsyth Tech in particular, and I see that you've taken crisis intervention and case management, those are more similar to courses that our master's students take. So when a student comes in with those, we give them lots of advanced standing credit for those particular courses because they're so advanced.
Excellent, excellent. So just kind of, piggybacking on that social work and this bachelor's in social work that Mike's sharing with us is an option for you. So of completing your AAS, this is one of the options, and in the next part of his presentation, he's going to give us more of the details that this would be something you would first complete your AAS and then transfer into that. It would be a next stair step So it'd be a bachelor's degree. It's not the only one out there, and it's not the only program out there. So he's just giving us the perspective because that's what he knows. He knows well. As you're listening to Mike or hearing him share about this profession, are there questions that are coming to mind? We'll just open it up here, and if not, I'm gonna just prompt Mike to continue. So as you're thinking of things, if you aren't sure about interrupting Mike, certainly we can do that, or you can write them down, and we'll also have time when we get to the end of his slides to ask those questions. So why don't we continue on, Mike?
Great. So let's talk a little bit about what social work as a career looks like. So I started with kind of those bigger conceptual things of what is social work? What's the meaning of social work? This is what it actually means in terms of career jobs, right? So at the bachelor's level, the Bachelor of Social Work, which is what, and let me back up a little bit. And so my role in the program, as Professor Zook said, I'm an assistant professor, so I teach in the program. I teach usually about half undergraduate courses and half graduate courses. And then the other half of my position is I'm director of the field program. So field is, we call it in very fancy terms, the signature pedagogy of social work, which effectively means that it's our signature way that we teach future social workers is through field education, which is quite frankly another way that AAS students with degrees in human services technology are way ahead of almost every other discipline of transfers that we take, to be honest, because you have that component through your clinical experience or work-based learning, whichever route you go. So the Bachelor of Social Work, couple of job examples. School social work. So the social workers that work for Winston-Salem, Forsyth County Schools or Guilford County Schools, working with children and families in a school setting to help create linkages between the kids and the school and families and services in the community. One of the main things that they do in that role, and it's a great route to go, UNC-G, our program offers a license in school social work. So you take a specific preset group of social work courses that leads to licensure at the state level in North Carolina, that allows you to then go and work in the school system. So that's a great route. Some other possible routes are working for CPS, Child Protective Services, or APS, Adult Protective Services, with, say, Forsyth County DSS or Guilford County DSS, doing interventions, assessments, investigations, investigating allegations of abuse, or case manager. Lots and lots of opportunities in the case management realm. So when you get to the point in your program where you're taking HSC 220, is that right? I think 220 case management.
220 case management, yes.
See,
you got
it's
it.
like a steel trap. It's great preparation in combination with the social work degree to work in family violence shelters, shelters for people experiencing homelessness, working in some medical settings. So those are some job options with the BSW degree. The next kind of degree up in the progression of social work is the MSW, the Master of Social Work. The Master of Social Work, and by the way, in social work, that's considered the terminal degree. And what that fancy term means is it's the highest degree that you can get in social work that's accredited. So there are doctoral degrees in social work. In fact, we offer one at UNC-G now. But the Master of Social Work is considered the highest social work specific degree. So medical social work, working in the hospital, working for doctor's offices, working in integrated healthcare settings, meaning that it's kind of this interdisciplinary team, right, of doctors and nurses and social workers all working together to help meet the needs of clients. In child protective services or adult protective services, working as a supervisor in those settings. The other thing that an MSW grants you is the ability to move forward with licensure, becoming licensed as a mental health counselor or mental health specialist in North Carolina. Before I get to that, though, I did want to mention that with the MSW, it's traditionally a 2-year degree, the Master of Social Work. So if a student, say, gets a bachelor's degree in psychology or English or any bachelor's degree, and they got into an MSW program, it would be 2 full years of full-time study. One cool thing about social work that also sets us apart from some other tracks is what's called advanced standing. And what that means is that there's an accrediting body for social work programs called the Council on Social Work Education, CSWE. And in fact, our program this year is going through our reaccreditation process. And what that means is that this accrediting body looks very, very closely at social work programs at both the bachelor's level and the master's level to make sure that they meet certain stringent requirements in terms of content. And anyone that goes to a CSWE accredited Bachelor of Social Work program can qualify for an advanced standing Master of Social Work program. And they're offered all across the country. I went for mine up to the Northeast. Lots of my students go out west, but we offer it right here at home at UNC-G and a joint program we have with North Carolina A&T State University. And what an advanced standing MSW means is that because we know a student has gained a certain core foundation of social work by doing the BSW, instead of a 2-year master's degree, their master's degree, they enter the program in the 2nd year. So their 2-year degree is actually becomes a 1-year degree. So it's a really great route for students to kind of speed up completion and get to the master's degree level. Also saves a lot of money. I tell folks it's a 50% off sale on graduate school. And what the MSW does, whether it's a 2-year MSW or an advanced standing MSW, allows you the option of becoming licensed. States require license, and in North Carolina in particular, a license is required in order to provide clinical services. And what clinical means is the assessment, diagnosis, and treatment of mental health and substance use disorders. And so with an MSW and then meeting some additional postmaster's requirements in terms of time in the field, time working under the guidance of a more senior clinician, you can become licensed as a licensed clinical social worker. So generally what that looks like is after 2 years of working in a mental health or substance use field, you can become licensed. It also allows in North Carolina your ability to pursue the LCAS credential, or the Licensed Clinical Addiction Specialist credential, towards the from the North Carolina Substance Abuse Professional Practice Board. If your interest is specifically in treating substance use disorders. Social workers with this particular credential provide more mental health services than any other profession in North Carolina, more than psychologists, more than licensed professional counselors, more than psychiatrists. Social workers are the primary providers of mental health services. One of the unique things about this is as well is that the LCSW in particular, the licensed clinical social worker credential, has standing with Medicare, Medicaid, insurance companies. We are the only non-doctoral level, so non-PhD level behavioral health provider that is allowed to bill Medicare. So it gives you a whole lot of opportunities for doing clinical work in hospitals, in private practice. A lot of folks will go and open up their own counseling practice or business. So some really, really great opportunities. And again, I know that was a whole lot of stuff, so please don't hesitate to jump in if there are questions. So what does social work at UNC-G look like? We've been continuously accredited by the Council on Social Work Education that I mentioned before since 1973. We're going through that process now. We renew that accreditation every 7 years. And the benefit is that it gives you then standing if you want to go on and get your master's degree with doing one of those accelerated programs if you choose to. We have about 100 students that complete the BSW each year at UNC-G. Our graduating class each year is about 100, just in the social work program. The piece of the program that I oversee is the field education program, and it's a joint program with North Carolina A&T State University. And what that means is that in the senior year, BSW students at UNC-G and the BSW students at North Carolina A&T come together and take courses together with one another from the different faculty on the different campuses, and complete courses or complete field experience courses together on teams. And so it's a really unique partnership between two universities. This year, at last count, we have about 140 students between UNC-G and A&T completing internships in 55 different agencies across the triad. So on a side note, one of the things that I really love about welcoming Forsyth Tech graduates is that a lot of folks live in Winston-Salem, which is where I live. It's where I'm from. I have a lot of contacts here. And so for the senior year internship that our students complete, very frequently, if a student lives in Winston-Salem, they can complete their internship right here in their home community so that you're not having to commute to Greensboro, which isn't bad. Pre-pandemic, I made that commute usually 4 or 5 days a week, and it's not terrible, but also perfectly happy when I don't have to make that commute. Some special programs that we offer related to field education that I wanted to mention because they're really unique in the country, and personally I think they're just pretty cool. We in the Department of Social Work house GC Stop, or Guilford County Solution to the Opioid Problem. It's a partnership between the Social Work Department and Guilford County EMS and the Guilford County Sheriff's Office. And what the program does is when law enforcement and paramedics respond to the scene of an overdose in Guilford County, they then refer that person to our program, and we have a team of professionals and student interns that go then and reach out to that person, provide counseling, substance use services, case management and referral, depending on what the person wants. We give them syringes or Narcan, which is the medication that reverses overdoses. So it's a really unique program, and one of the only syringe exchange programs, harm reduction programs in the state that focuses on a partnership with a university. So that's pretty cool. We partner with the Congregational Social Work Education Initiative, and this is a really neat partnership between the Department of Social Work and Cone Health, where Cone Health puts nurses in the community, primarily at religious institutions, as kind of a point of medical contact. It helps folks access health care, especially when they don't have access to transportation. And we pair a student or two with a Cone Health nurse that then go and offer medical social work and medical services all across Guilford and Rockingham County. A couple more. We have the Child Welfare Education Collaborative, which is a program that we partner with UNC Chapel Hill on, where our students complete a field internship in child welfare and child protective services, and take coursework specific to working with children, working with families. And students that complete that program then can go and get a job with child protective services in Forsyth County, Guilford County, Davidson County, wherever they live or want to live, and go in as an advanced social worker, making more money than you would other ways, because you've had this additional specific experience and training. I talked about the school social work program. And then we also have a study abroad program, which hopefully will reignite over the summer. We're waiting to see what travel restrictions are like. But it's an opportunity where for your last year in the program, if you students that want to have the option of doing the first semester of their internship in another country and experiencing social work courses at one of our sister institutions. We frequently have students go to Barcelona, Spain. There's a program in Belgium. There's one in Costa Rica. That one I always volunteer for, and I haven't gotten it yet. I have to learn Spanish. If you know Spanish, we will send you to Costa Rica if you want to. Some really, really cool opportunities there.
So, hey, Mike, I'm going to pause you there on some of those opportunities. Those sound really,
So what does it look like for
awesome.
you, for a potential transfer student? Generally, folks that come to us, especially folks from Forsyth Tech, honestly, who've majored in human services technology, tend to do really, really well in the BSW program. You've taken core courses, you've been out in the field, you know how to engage professionally with agencies through your field experience. So we tend to see a whole lot of success, which is wonderful. In fact, many go on to do our one-year MSW program, do the advanced standing. One of my pieces of advice to you is that if you're interested in potentially transferring, then I would encourage you to reach out to me or my colleague, Dr. Rhodes. There's some handouts I have for you with all the contact information well ahead. If you say you were going to graduate in May, then I would suggest reaching out now, like in the fall of the year in which you're going to graduate, so that we can help you navigate the transfer process and which courses, which courses to take in your final semester or two at Forsyth Tech. Excuse me. So a couple of tips if you're thinking about transferring or think that it might be something on your radar. When you look at or talk with your advisors at Forsyth Tech and you're mapping out what to take in the curriculum options. For instance, in the curriculum options for the AAS where it says, select a math or science option. Select courses that are part of the CAA or Comprehensive Articulation Agreement. those are courses, and you know them in the Forsyth Tech catalog online. They'll have a little A in a box. And what that means is that that course, we don't have to beg anybody for credit, right? It's automatically recognized. So when you are choosing your math or science option, if you choose Bio 110, I think it is, or Math 152, those courses are part of the articulation agreement, and it's a super easy transfer over to UNC-G. The other piece, the other suggestion I have is that as you're looking at your human service electives, generally courses at the 200 level at Forsyth Tech will automatically transfer over to UNC-G. However, we will also take a lot of the 100 level human service courses, and we're working with our registrar at UNC-G to automatically recognize those. And so sometimes those take a little bit more documentation on my side of things, which is fine, and we don't mind doing it, but focusing on 200 level usually makes it a little bit easier for you. The other thing that's super, super important is that our course, Social Work 215 at UNC-G, Introduction to Social Work, is required it's required that students take that before taking any of our junior level courses. So as a transfer student, if you come in and say you start in the fall, even though you may have enough credits to be a junior, if you haven't yet taken Social Work 215, then it's going to delay. It's going to make your 2-year program at UNC-G 3 years, because you have to take Social Work 215 prior to taking the other junior level social work courses. So the way around that, and one of the reasons I suggest that students reach out to me early and before transfer, is that if we can get you into that Social Work 215 as a visiting student for either the spring in which you're graduating or that summer, then what that does is that puts you on track to be able to jump right into your junior level courses. And I believe, Bessie's correct me if I'm wrong, but I think that students can reverse transfer Social Work 215 back into Forsyth Tech as an elective.
Exactly. So that started with this past year's program or in the catalog, so that if you do that option, so you make arrangements with UNC-G, and you can also do the same thing with Winston-Salem State,
Awesome.
but take an Intro to Social Work class, so it can count towards that.
For you. I had emailed Professor Zook earlier a couple of documents so that she can share with you a example of a program of study. In other words, what courses you would take at UNC-G once you transfer, as well as just some other kind of informational documents.
So yeah, can you all hear me?
What questions or comments do you have for me?
So are you able to hear me? Is my mic working?
Can't hear you, Betsy.
Okay, let me see if I can reset that up. I'm going to come in and out and see if I can get my mic working.
Okay, that may have been an issue on my end.
Actually,
there we go. I apologize. Okay.
Okay. All right. So those documents that Mike's talking about, I have posted them in the 900 section in under the class slide. So those are posted. I will also get those out if there's anyone from any of our other courses. I'll get those shared with you along with posting this recording. And I was just going to underscore that part that we have added the Intro to Social Work is one of the options under your AAS plan where you choose 5 human services electives. That's when you might take substance abuse overview or family studies or developmental disabilities. One of those now is Intro to Social Work. We don't offer it on our campuses or at Forsyth Tech, but we will give you credit for it, like Mike was referring to as reverse credit. So you can be finishing up your AAS with us and then also be getting your feet wet in either at Winston-Salem State or at UNC-G in an Intro to Social Work class. So we are still figuring out some of those logistics, but it would be you'd connect up with the admissions department and the social work departments at those schools. And I think, Mike, those classes are often available online, so students could navigate that.
Yes. So social work 215 in particular, we're offering, one of the things that the pandemic that's really a great result of the pandemic is we're offering lots of things in lots of different formats. So usually we offer 2 sections of intro every semester and a section in the summer.
Okay. Super. Yeah. So yeah, can just kind of map
and those
out.
are online. Yes.
Okay. Was just going to ask you, Mike, on some of those special programs you had mapped out, are those things that a student would specifically select to go into, say, school social work, or that opioid, that special program for the Greensboro opioid program, or those others, or are they limited on who can get involved? How do those work?
So for the special programs, there's an application process where you have to meet some requirements that are in addition to being admitted to the program. So what that looks like is that, say a student was transferring in, they could declare social work as their major right at the beginning if they wanted to. Once they got to their junior year, they would apply for formal admission to the upper division major. And essentially what that means is that we would kind of pause in their program and make sure that they've met certain requirements. For example, those requirements are C or better in social work and intro to social work, have to have a 2.5 GPA or better at UNC-G, some things like that. In the junior year, in fact, our current juniors are in the process now of applying to their field experience. And so school social work, for instance, requires a little bit higher of a GPA. They have to have a 3.0 GPA to meet state requirements. Something like the substance use track in our program, or doing Guilford County's solution to the opioid problem, is just a matter of a student saying, hey, I'm really interested in this. Could I do this as my internship? And so far, I haven't ever had to say to somebody, no, you can't do that. It's if they've been interested, then that's the track we send.
Okay, so sounds like, yeah, a lot of opportunities, and people can get into a lot of their interest areas. I loved how you shared that there's a lot of different journeys coming into social work, and that the skill sets are more than just what, an academic GPA. Well, sometimes it sounds like those play out for certain specialized programs. Could you elaborate more on just, what makes a good prospect for a social work program and some of those characteristics or traits?
Sure. So I think that a student, one of the things that's different about, and not even really specific to social work, but just kind of the university in general, is that UNC-G, NC State, UNC Charlotte, these are Winston-Salem State, these are big institutions. And so students who are proactive and really seek out learning opportunities and advocate for themselves tend to be really good fits.
Okay.
It's easy sometimes for instance, at UNC-G, in looking at all of our majors, we have about 400 declared social work majors at UNC-G. So it's kind of easy to coast under the radar, I guess, and which is okay for some students, but for other students, it's important that they feel confident about reaching out and saying, hey, Mike, what do you think about this? So being very present. Um, I think that the other trait that's would be good for students, some of the other things that come to mind, are folks that not just want to help people, but also want to really engage with folks that are um, a lot of times experiencing the worst time of their life and wanting to help work with them, to empower them, and to advocate on their behalf. Um, it's not necessarily a swoop in and rescue someone as much as we would like to sometimes. It's empowering them to help do that themselves. Um, I also think that just in term academically, um, to have to feel good about taking courses that you're interested in, about reaching out if you're taking a course that's a little bit tougher. A lot of social workers, myself included, math is not our favorite thing. Um, on a side note, if you take Math 152, which is statistics, right, at Forsyth Tech as your math or science option, you never have to take another math course again, even if you do the Bachelor of Social Work and the Master of Social Work at UNC-G. Um,
Oh.
so reaching out and saying, hey, I want to, I need some help with this, is a real strength.
So huge tip there, that maybe when choosing the math or the science option with your AAS, that you can talk with the advisor. We can look at where getting in Math 152 statistics. So at Forsyth Tech, where they've really built up the supports for the math courses. So there's co-requisites that you may take, or there may be the prerequisite to get ready to get through that class. So great options. Um, let's open up mics, or folks, let's throw out some questions here. We've got Mike with us here to answer any of those. What things have we not covered this morning that you'd like to know? And as we're getting to that, Mike, anything that you could share about the schedule for classes, or how it might work for someone who also has kids and jobs or other responsibilities while trying to juggle getting through school?
Yes. So we don't offer a fully online Bachelor of Social Work program. Most social work programs, speaking of kids, I'm juggling remote learning in a COVID environment like many of you, I suspect. So in terms of schedule, UNCG is really moving. It's interesting. We're really moving to this hybrid model of offering multiple sections of courses where students can either come to campus or they can take the course online. So a lot of students can do the bulk of their degree online if they choose. I find that a lot of students want to come to campus and really experience what campus and in-person courses are like at UNCG. But we can also be very strategic in that. So for instance, a lot of times I'll work with my Forsyth Tech students to take a combination of online and in-person, and select in-person courses where maybe they come to Greensboro 1 day per week instead of multiple days per week. But you can be mostly online. The only real limitation to that is in the spring of the junior year, there are several courses that are practice-based courses that are similar to like HSC 123 interviewing techniques, or 125, I think,
Right,
counseling,
right.
where there's some live interaction component because it's a skills-based course. And then in the senior year, most of what you do is in the field, and that can be done in your home community, wherever that is.
Okay, okay, super. Anything tips or about how admissions works? Is UNC-G doing a rolling admissions, or are there deadlines that they should think about if they want to apply?
So there are some deadlines for specific points of entry. So for instance, if somebody wanted to um, start in the spring, then there's a deadline ahead of that. But we accept transfer students all throughout the year, and you can enter at any point in the year.
Okay.
Um, Summer, one of the other things too, by the way, that's really cool is if you wanted to do a little sampling, like say you're not quite sure, if you wanted to take, for instance, Social Work 215, you could do it as a visiting student. And what that means is that there's a shorter application, and you can just go to UNC-G admissions on our website and apply as a visiting student. You can take the course. You don't have to take admission tests to get in. You just take it kind of as a visitor. And then if you do choose to go to UNC-G or any UNC system school later, that course is part of your transcript.
Oh, awesome. So a simple admissions for that intro to social work, that class that can count backwards towards your AAS degree. Whenever a student, if you're going to more than one institution, financial aid can work, but you need to be proactive and talk to financial aid offices at both schools, because then they need to collaborate and count up your numbers, and there's a little bit different logistics for dipping into both. But the fact that there's a simple admissions process to get in for that class, that's a great thing to know.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah. I'm sorry. The other thing that came to mind talking about math is that the other piece that's important to know is that if you like to transfer, UNC-G admissions will look at your transcript from Forsyth Tech and look at your overall GPA and look at how you did in your courses in terms of making an admissions decision. However, when you transfer to UNC-G, anything that you're transferring in from Forsyth Tech transfers as a T, transfer credit. And so, in other words, we have students, and kind of if I were to paint a picture of a transfer student that gets in and does really well in our program, they may have great grades in their human services courses and some of their gen ed courses. But in order to transfer a course and get transfer credit, you have to have a C or better. So sometimes a student will come in, you may have all A's at Forsyth Tech and a C in statistics. Get in, it all looks the same at UNC-G, and your GPA starts fresh again. So you don't have to worry about, as long as it's a C or better, take that statistics and the biology and things like that. A lot of our most successful students do that, or even decide, you know what, I'm going to go back this summer and take statistics at Forsyth Tech instead of at UNC-G, so that the credit follows me, but not the grade if I hate math. For not that
Sure.
any,
So
so
you can
right.
have the 4.0 still with your bachelor's of social work while still getting C's in your math. That's a
Exactly.
good
Yeah.
strategy
A
there.
life pro tip.
Okay, excellent, excellent. Well, still open for questions. I think we maybe have just given a lot of information for people to soak in. I will be posting the materials that Mike has shared with us, and I'll also be sure to post there your contact information. Mike, is the email the best way during COVID days to reach out to you?
Absolutely, yes, that'd be great.
Okay, all right. So we'll let people reach out to you then with their individual questions that way. So. Well, excellent. Well, thank you so much for joining us. This has been real helpful. I'm real glad that we also have a recording of this, so we'll be able to have people look at it all throughout the semester and hopefully make some good bridges. So thank you
Great.
much.
Thank you so much for having me. And folks, please don't hesitate to reach out. I love hearing from Forsyth Tech students. It's one of my little connections back to folks in a program that I really care a lot about. And so don't hesitate at all.
All right, super. Well, I'm good.